From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. New at 10, a Billings doctor who had been a healthy 38-year-old nearly dies after a battle with COVID-19. Tonight he shares his story with Q2. Now he says he wants everyone to do what they can to avoid the virus and advises using masks and getting the vaccine. Q2's David J. reports that Dr. Adam Zelka is feeling better and tests taken today will reveal whether or not he has any long-term effects.
Big breath in. Perfect.
Dr. Adam Zelka takes some tests for his lungs.
So I'm getting lung studies to figure out if I have any, hopefully not permanent lung damage, but some ongoing dysfunction with my lungs because of how sick I got last fall. So I was hospitalized for 10 days in November with severe COVID pneumonia with sepsis and respiratory failure.
We are doing a pulmonary function test, which shows how a person's lung function is based on their age, height, gender, and race.
Dr. Zelka is a family medicine physician at St. Vincent Healthcare's Heights Clinic. He came down with COVID-19 in November.
It was on my birthday, on November 9th, that I started feeling just a little tired and fatigued. I was feeling run down. I could still smell, I could still taste, I could still do whatever I wanted. I just felt like I was tired. My regular day out was on Wednesdays. Right in the middle of the day, all of a sudden, I just, out of nowhere, started getting horrible shaking chills and my fever shot up to 104. 5 days into that, I was too weak, I was too tired. The body aches were out of this world.
And he stayed quarantined and isolated from his family.
You know, I have 4 daughters and they're all young, and my wife, and we kept constant contact with one another, but I could really only talk for about 3 or 4 minutes at a time. I would nap for hours.
And his experience gives him some wisdom about COVID-19.
So I just want people to know just not to live in fear of anything, but just to acknowledge the real fact that this is a potentially devastating virus for anybody, you know, and I'm proof positive of that. And if there's anything you can do to avoid getting sick or to reduce the risk of passing it on if you are sick.
In Billings, David J., MTN News.
Thanks, David. Another medical tool shows that Dr. Zelka has good lung capacity. However, a pulmonologist will need to go over his test results for the actual evaluation. Here in Billings, it's been sort of surreal to see people once again turning out to venues for entertainment. This since Governor Greg Gianforte relaxed state gathering restrictions. Q2's Mitch Legge takes us to Metro Park, where things are moving forward.
Public entertainment events in the Billings area are finally starting to get back to normal after the COVID-19 pandemic. Here at Metro Park, the calendar is packed with different events for people to enjoy. Inside the First Interstate Arena Wednesday, Class A schools were playing for divisional basketball titles.
We have a lot of activity beginning to happen. As far as the safety precautions, certainly we follow whatever the governor tells us we need to do, and we maintain those rules.
Massey said promoters of different events can choose how strict they want their COVID-19 policy to be. At the basketball tournament, people followed guidelines put in place by the Montana High School Association, which are a bit more strict than the general Metro Park policy. Some more big events, a Toby Keith concert, and professional bull riders events are scheduled for May. Massey said the arena will be more full for those shows than seen here in the video filmed Wednesday.
But it's not going to be 8,500 people in the arena won't occur for that show. Same kind of thing with PBR. We're working with them to establish an appropriate amount of attendance for the arena in order to keep people safe.
Over at the Expo Center, 157 boats and campers were on display for the Billings RV and Boat Show, thrown by Brett's RV and Marine, that runs through the end of this week. The RV and Boat Show was one of the final events to be hosted at the Metro in 2020 before the shutdown. Foot traffic has been heavy at the Expo Center, with about 700 families coming through in the first 2.5 days. The show is usually a big revenue generator for Brett's, but the company still had a good year last year, with the boom in camping that was seen across the country.
If it had wheels and a furnace and a fridge for an RV, somebody was going to take it and go camping. And the boats, we literally sold out of boats midsummer last year.
Judging by the foot traffic the show has seen so far, Brett said there may be another boom in the camping industry this summer. Reporting in Billings, Mitch Legge, MTN News.
Thanks, Mitch. Well, Republicans at the Montana legislature endorsed 2 additional bills today that would further allow the carrying of firearms in publicly owned buildings. The Montana House voted for a bill that says local governments in the state cannot prohibit the carrying of firearms at any building under their jurisdiction. And the Montana Senate okayed a bill saying that any state legislator can carry a legally possessed firearm on any portion of state property open to the public except a prison. The legislature already has passed a bill broadly expanding where Montanans can carry firearms, including college campuses. The sponsors of these bills said they're meant to clarify any confusion on where you can carry a weapon in public buildings. Democratic State Representative Connie Keogh of Missoula said the first measure would lead to unsafe situations at county courthouses and other public buildings. But one Republican lawmaker from Great Falls said he welcomes the ability to carry a weapon in certain public areas like the county fairgrounds.
Think of one particular place in my county that, so far as I know, I can't carry a weapon, and that's the county fairgrounds. Now, I'm a taxpayer. I pay for that. I go there. There's often events that have a lot of people. I don't know everybody that's there. I'd rather be able to legally carry a weapon to protect myself and my family.
Our local city halls and courthouses are not a place for openly carrying or concealing of firearms. Local public employees routinely deal with matters that involve high levels of emotion and angst and need protection from reprisal and attack.
All legislative Democrats and a few Republicans voted against the bills, which passed on largely party line votes. They each face a final vote before advancing to the next House. Well, tonight, a closer look at something seldom used, but it's getting attention from lawmakers in Montana and Wyoming, the controversial issue of the death penalty. Last week, the Montana House passed House Bill 244. It would put Montana back on track to resume executions. That bill, sponsored by Billings Republican Representative Dennis Lenz, changes language in the state law concerning the drugs used in lethal injection. The bill now goes to the Senate. And this week, another bill that would have abolished the death penalty in Montana was tabled without discussion. Montana's last execution was in 2006. Meanwhile, in Wyoming, several groups are involved in the effort to try and repeal the death penalty, and they came pretty close to succeeding 2 years ago, falling just a few votes short. Another bill is expected to be introduced in the coming week. And some of the opposition to capital punishment is coming from those who've been most hurt by violence.
It was in 1993. My mother was working at a convenience store here in Green River, Wyoming.
30 years ago now, and she was 24 years old. She was working as an entertainer, singing and dancing in Great Falls.
And a random individual came in and kidnapped, took her out to an area where he then raped and strangled her to death.
And she'd been in a relationship that had been very stormy. I got a call that she had been shot, and it was a really dark and long, hard time.
Sue Dupree and Crystal Martin share a tragic bond of losing a loved one to murder. They're also both members of a group called Wyoming Conservatives concerned about the death penalty. Sue has served as a pastor of churches in both Wyoming and Montana.
I have consistently argued against it for the last 30 years. Really, I felt like it was one way that I could honor the life of my daughter to just speak up for life in general.
Crystal not only lost her mother as a child, 25 years later, she also lost her husband to homicide.
Then, as an adult in 2014, my husband was shot in the head and burned in a fire pit.
She later began studying criminal justice and learned about a restorative justice program in Wyoming that allows victims' families to meet an offender in hopes of bringing about healing. It would bring her face to face with the man who killed her mother.
At first it was really scary walking into the prison. I'll tell you that. The gates closing behind me, just slamming, making me jolt, not knowing what to expect. But then when I got in there, it was empowering. It was, I get to lead the conversation. I get to have the questions answered that I've been waiting so long to have answered.
You forgive him?
I did. I absolutely did. He's a human being, just as anybody else is.
Wyoming has only executed one person since capital punishment was reinstated, and that was in 1992. There's no one awaiting execution. But last year, the U.S. Supreme Court cleared the way for a possible return to death row for Dale Wayne Eaton by declining to hear his appeal. Eaton, now 75, could be resentenced to death for the horrific 1988 kidnap, rape, and murder of 18-year-old Lisa Marie Kimmel, who'd been driving home to visit her parents in Billings from Denver. Eaton was linked to Kimmel's murder in 2003, her car found buried on his property. The time and cost involved in a death penalty case are two of the reasons why opponents argue against it.
You don't see it as a deterrent in any way?
Absolutely not. No, I see it as an easy way out.
It hasn't been proven to be a deterrent. I've studied the issue a lot, and the statistics don't bear out a deterrence on it.
A lot of people do feel eye for an eye. For me, I feel that there's no justification in taking another person's life, no matter the harms that they cause you.
But Crystal believes the money spent on death penalty cases would be better off going toward victims' families or other efforts to prevent crime. The cost of a death penalty case also got the attention of the state's Republican governor, Mark Gordon, who said last summer that Wyoming may implement a moratorium on the death penalty to save money. Montana Senator Steve Daines is a solid no vote on Secretary of Interior nominee Representative Deb Holland. Daines announced his opposition following a two-day hearing. Ranking Republican Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming also says no. Daines says Holland harbors a hostile record in view of energy and natural resources. She would become the first Native American appointed to a cabinet-level position, and she's supported by tribes across the nation. Daines acknowledges the milestone, but that will not sway his vote.
But I evaluate any person's nomination based on their prior record. And yes, we need to continue to work hard in Indian country and all these issues of missing and murdered Indigenous women. It relates to housing, it relates to the issues of poverty and drugs and violence. But that doesn't mean that Representative Holland is going to be the best Secretary of Interior. Her views, her radical views on energy, so forth, that's going to hurt Indian country, not help Indian country.
If all 50 Democratic senators support Holland, she will not need any GOP votes to win confirmation. Still to come on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2, the latest Montana deep freeze hit the state's farmers and ranchers harder than most. We'll learn of several programs looking to help them bounce back in the Ag Report. And in sports, still February, but it feels a lot like March Madness. Highlights from tonight's Eastern A Divisionals coming up in just a bit.
35 degrees in Billings today, cooler than average and cold enough that we picked a little snow up along the way and some snow pellets. Come back, take a look at the warmer details of the upcoming days.
From Montana's